Well, thank you. We're very excited to be here, and we also want to thank Lawrence for scheduling a very full 3 days for us. We had some great tours this morning and are looking forward to even more tours this week. So I'm going to talk about the regulation of medical imaging and radiation therapy products in imaging science research at FDA. I'll start with a brief overview of just some key concepts to not overwhelm anyone. Then we'll talk a little bit. Dan will talk about medical imaging and biomarkers. Mike will talk about radiation therapy, and Nick will talk about imaging science research. So really at FDA, we're really interested in seeking to protect and promote public health by assuring that patients have timely and continued access to safe, effective, and high-quality medical devices. At the same time, we're also really interested in initiatives that can reduce the regulatory burden and speed the translation of innovative, safe, and effective products to the market. So there's a lot of aspects to the medical device regulation, from investigational studies to pre-market to post-market compliance, and even when there's modifications of devices, it feeds back into the pre-market and research and development. So we don't have time to go through everything today, but I'll just highlight a few key items that we consider in the pre-market review of medical devices. So first, what's a medical device? You know the Act, regulations, and laws can be a little confusing, but to simplify, a medical device is intended for use in the diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease in humans, or intended to affect the structure or any function of the body. So some examples of this, a medical device could be a picture archiving and communication systems that's intended for a hospital's image storage, retrieval, and viewing functions. Or it could be a computer algorithm intended to both identify and prompt lung nodules on CT exams, and also to provide a probability of malignancy score to a clinician for each potential lesion as additional information. Some things that could not be a medical device, software that's intended to automate office operations such as patient scheduling or setting a follow-up satisfaction survey, or even a digital library that's intended to provide access to electronic copies of radiological medical textbooks and reference images. So a common question that we get is, well, what's my device classification and submission type? It's a very good question because there's multiple device classifications and even multiple submission types, which I won't go into too much today, but the general thought is these classes and the submission types are based on risks. They're also based on looking at safety and effectiveness of medical devices. But the answer to this question really depends on the intended use and technological characteristics of that device, existing devices that are on the market, predicates, prior decisions, we want to be consistent, and also risk mitigations factor into it as well. For this talk, I really want to talk about the intended use and the impact that has. So the intended use means the general purpose of the device or its function and encompasses the indications for use. Indications for use describes the disease or conditions the device will diagnose, treat, prevent, cure, or mitigate, including a description of the patient population for which the device is intended. So now in the radiation therapy, radiation oncology, medical device indications can be very general actually. And what do I mean by general? So a CT is intended to produce cross-sectional images of the body by computer reconstruction of X-ray transmission data, or a general purpose ultrasound imaging and analysis systems providing acquisition, processing, display for regions of the body. These are very general indications for use that are common for our imaging modalities. Specific indications for use, though, can also be software or a device that's intended to measure liver iron concentration to aid in the identification and monitoring of non-transfusion dependent transleukemia patients receiving therapy with diphyrosics. So that's very specific. And well, why is this important, general specific, and how does it impact our review and FDA and you actually, or medical device developers? So the relationship between intended use and performance data. Well, the performance data needed to support pre-market submission depends on the intended use of the device. For example, if the device is intended to provide tools for measuring volume, again, that's a very general intended use, the type of data requirements for that are going to be very different than this device may be used to measure changes in microlesions from CT in patients with traumatic brain injury. And again, one has a very specific patient population, very specific task, where one's much more general. And so specific uses will likely require clinical data from the specific clinical population. Another comment on performance data also depends on the technological characteristics of the device as well. And that could include electromagnetic compatibility, biocompatibility, software verification, signal to noise, or even clinical data. But and performance data may be from phantoms, numerical simulations, or clinical studies. The validation needed for a device, again, must be consistent with the intended use and technological characteristics of the device. And so as mentioned before, the general indications for use that we've seen, they permit device manufacturers to make medical devices available to the community faster. Where specific intended uses not included in the indications for use may not have been validated. So let me describe this really quickly. So a CT scanner, again, it's generally indicated to produce cross-sectional images of the body. We can validate that generally with phantoms or simulations to understand that, yes, this can produce cross-sectional images of a structure. But that doesn't mean that CT systems, or all CT systems, are then cleared and studied or reviewed by FDA for very specific clinical applications. Now, a manufacturer may come to us and say, well, we want to indicate our CT imaging therapy device for a specific application. And again, when we see that specific indication, the indications for use, that's when we start to ask the specific questions about their validation study. So this is why the kind of general tool claim versus specific claim is very important to FDA when we're reviewing these products. And again, it's not a simple question or a simple answer. And FDA does have a lot of resources to help manufacturers. So we have guidance documents that are intended to provide an interpretation of our regulations. They reflect FDA's current thinking. They're non-binding. Alternative approaches may be used. And there's general and specific guidance documents available. So there's ones that are for ultrasound, MRI imaging, software, or even the general process of different submission types. They can be modified more frequently than regulations, and they are intended to simplify, streamline the pre-market process by clarifying expectations. So again, FDA effort in these guidance documents goes back to our interest in seeing new devices get to the market that are safe and effective. There's also resources on FDA's databases to look for 510Ks, for PMAs, for, again, prior decisions. As we mentioned, some of the information for what we expect in a submission can be found by looking at some of our prior decisions, which we make publicly available. And another great resource for clarification of issues or just for discussion with FDA is pre-submissions. We generally really like this program. Again, FDA staff generally like interacting with manufacturers and trying to help them get their devices to the market because we do want to see safe and effective devices on the market. So the pre-submission process is an informal interaction with FDA. Usually it's non-binding, can be informational meetings, study risk determinations, early collaborations, or submission issue meetings. And they're recommended to allow sponsors to obtain feedback on device-specific questions. So again, that's a very simple, high-level overview of some of what we do. And now I'll turn it over to Dan, who will get into a little bit more details on medical imaging and biomarkers.